Hello from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. This is Josh Friedman coming to you at the conclusion of my now month-long stay in Tanzania's most populous city and what might soon be one of the world's most populous cities, which will be the focus of this video. I'm doing this more so in studio than on location, given that I'm going to need some numbers and some figures in front of me as I've been digging into the curious case that is the prospect of Dar es Salaam having about 75 million residents by the year 2100. So I mentioned to you in my first report from the city center here in Dar, and by the way, once again, the Dar skyline is behind me, although it's not quite as clear from this vantage point, but the three towers, anyway, boy, it's hard for me to point them out. Yeah, you've got the two twin towers, the green ones, plus the blue Port Authority right there. They don't look as tall from this vantage point, but yeah, they're there in the background. Again, as I'm enjoying my final day up or around the Dar es Salaam skyline. So I'd seen in multiple locations people throwing out figures around 75 million as the projection for the population of Dar in the year 2100. I think I've seen as high as 76 million. But in this report, I'm going to be focusing on a paper published by the Global Cities Institute, which I believe is at the University of Ontario in Canada. And those figures, which compile population projections for cities worldwide over the course of the next century, and in particular, in the year 2100. Anyway, those figures place Dar es Salaam in the year 2100 as the world's third largest city with a projected population of 73.7 million people. And according to this paper and these projections, which I should say up front, in the paper, the authors flat out say that these are educated guesses and that by no means are these projections that they're extremely confident that they're going to be accurate. But they are educated guesses, and I think there's some very interesting reasoning behind them, which I'm going to delve into. And I think some of the reasoning indeed points to Dar being a place that'll have explosive population growth. But what I was about to get into is that this growth is going to be crazy in terms of how fast it's going to accelerate toward the end of the current century. So according to these projections, Dar, which right now has somewhere around 5 million residents, we don't know exactly, but we're just going to say 5 million for now. Anyway, by the year 2050, Dar is supposed to grow, according to this Global Cities Institute paper. Dar is supposed to grow to 16 million, that's 16 million residents by the year 2050. Then, in the year 2075, according to this paper, Dar is supposed to have 37.5 million, which that total over the final quarter of this century is supposed to double. So according to these projections, from 2075 to 2100, the population of Dar is supposed to grow from 37.5 million to 73.7 million, which is doubling in 20 years, and absolutely explosive growth. In the year 2100, according to these projections, the three largest cities in the world will all be in sub-Saharan Africa. The largest, according to this projection, is going to be Lagos, Nigeria, coming in at 88.3 million people, followed by number 2, Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, at 83.5 million people, just under 10 million ahead of Dar es Salaam's projected total. And since we're discussing sub-Saharan Africa, I think we should get right into some of the reasoning behind these projections. And obviously, I'll be focusing on Dar. So, one of the, if not the primary reason given for a lot of the eye-popping numbers in this paper is the urbanization of sub-Saharan Africa. There's supposed to be an accelerated rate of urbanization in sub-Saharan Africa. And I'm going to comb through some figures relating to population and urbanization in Tanzania and Dar that I would say support the notion that there's going to be rapid sub-Saharan African urbanization. So looking at the figures that I have compiled from the CIA World Factbook, I see that Tanzania as a whole, not Dar, but Tanzania as a whole, currently has a population of 55.45 million, which that might you think, well, that's crazy. How could Dar alone have a population of nearly 20 million more than the current population of the country by the end of the century, which indeed sounds crazy, but it might very well indeed be possible. So right now Tanzania's got about 55 million people, but only 1/3 approximately of those people live in urban areas, and obviously not even close to 1/3 currently live in Dar, which I'll probably discuss in a quick follow-up video to this, but there are interesting reasons why Tanzania has maintained a fairly low urbanization level. I'm not going to discuss it now, but if you compare Tanzania's urbanization to global urbanization, the figures, I believe, from the UN are that worldwide, about 55% of people live in urban areas, and in Tanzania it's about 1/3. However, that's changing and that's growing. Tanzania has a current urbanization rate of, I forget whose figure this is, but the rate I currently see is 5.22. Tanzania's current 5.22% is Tanzania's current urbanization rate, which is one of the highest in the world. And currently, these numbers are from the CIA Factbook. Tanzania currently has a fertility rate of 4.8 children per woman, which is pretty whopping, pretty high. And 2/3 of the country's current population is under the age of 25. So those figures clearly point to rapid population growth in the country as a whole. And regarding urbanization, if the rate continues to grow, and I would guess that it will, given that even though right now the country only has 33%, or 1/3 of the people in the country live in urban areas, that figure is already increasing fairly rapidly. It was in the mid-20s about a decade ago, and as I mentioned, Tanzania already has one of the highest urbanization rates in the world. And just from my experience being here on the ground, as well as in Zanzibar, and I'm about to travel elsewhere in the country, but I've already heard repeatedly lots of people, particularly young people, saying that they've got to move to Dar es Salaam or to Zanzibar to find work because they don't have options in whatever rural area or other city that they are from. So I would expect, based on the stats that are already indicating rapid urbanization, as well as just my conversations with people and the hunch I guess get that indeed many people from across Tanzania are going to be moving into Dar es Salaam over the coming decades. Another major reason for rapid population growth in the cities that factored prominently in these world projections for 2100. Anyway, this paper, another factor that was listed as a key reason for various immigration trends is or various immigration figures is the trend of immigration to coastal cities. So Dar es Salaam is obviously a coastal city, and on the east coast of Africa, it's a very prominent city. It actually is the largest city already on the east coast of Africa. It's got the primary port on the east coast of Africa. And in fact, when you take a look at a lot of these sub-Saharan African cities that are supposed to have tremendous population growth over the coming decades, most of them are not along the coast. So when you combine the urbanization of sub-Saharan Africa, and particularly Tanzania, and immigration to coastal cities, if those two are key contributing factors to humongous population growth, then I would say Dar es Salaam is certainly in line to be a recipient of hordes of people moving in, as well as lots of babies being had here. I took a look at Nairobi, which is probably the other prominent city in the region where it factors in. By the way, I'll be visiting Nairobi sometime in the near future, where it factors into this list of projections for 2100, and Nairobi is up there. It narrowly misses out on the top 10. Nairobi comes in at number 12 for the projection for largest cities in the world in 2100, with a projected population of 46.7 million. So Nairobi is supposed to grow tremendously, as well, as is the case with pretty much every major city in sub-Saharan Africa. But I would wonder how much the Indian Ocean, which is just behind me, and the port, which is also just behind me, although not in the picture, I would wonder how much the coastal location here in Dar es Salaam is going to drive growth here, as opposed to competing population centers like Nairobi. So if indeed urbanization of sub-Saharan Africa and immigration to coastal cities are major trends in population growth as they are listed in this report published by the Global Cities Institute, then yeah, I think there's plenty of reason to expect tremendous growth here in Dar es Salaam. Now, does that mean there will be 73.7 million people here by the year 2100? Who knows? There's plenty of skepticism being raised about some of these projections. A couple of the points that I have already seen as in response to this paper, I've seen people raising skepticism that there's going to be enough economic development in some of these mega cities to warrant the huge population figures that are being projected. And there's also a lot of talk about climate change. I think even in the report they were discussing how climate change could be a big variable and could impact up or down these population figures. Frankly, I have a hunch that climate change isn't going to be a huge driver of growth or negative growth here, but we're talking decades to come, so I can't tell you. I've seen some little splashdowns along the promenade of Barack Obama Drive in the evening or when there's high tide, but it'd be hard for me to see sea level rise flooding Dar es Salaam, but I don't know. I'm not a climate scientist, but nonetheless, there's skepticism being raised about these projections. I, for one, am curious whether there's going to be economic development in Dar es Salaam to the point where it's going to drive population growth of these figures, but there is reason to believe, as I alluded to a bit in the previous report discussing this issue. There's the port here. There's all kinds of commercial activity coming from various industries in Tanzania, mining, for instance, and there's going to be lots of trade going on at the port, and you can already see there's financial development here. I think there's going to be a lot more of that to come. It's probably going to be a financial hub within the region, if for that matter it already is, but the region's going to have exponential growth. So I would tend to think that there's going to be tremendous economic development here. There are other questions that arise about, for instance, will the infrastructure and will the transport systems be able to sustain this huge growth? Is corruption going to be a lingering problem that's going to hinder getting the infrastructure, transport up to where it needs to be to allow for these huge numbers of people to settle here? It seems like Dar es Salaam's rapid transit bus system is a sign of hope that got launched in recent years, and traffic, at least in the bus lanes, moves rather quickly, and the rest of the city in general doesn't. But yeah, I've mentioned before, there's lots and lots of open space still here, so there's plenty of potential for growth. I find it very interesting that this Global Cities Institute paper discusses as key factors, issues, or rather factors, as I've already mentioned repeatedly, urbanization, coastal locations that are going to be in Dar es Salaam's favor in terms of attracting a lot of people. So I would say, to sum things up, it seems crazy, but I could see the possibility there being 750,000 people living here by the end of the current century. Who knows how it will play out, but I'd like to come back to visit in the coming years, if not decades, to see what on earth is happening in this then mega city. So thank you very much for tagging along with my journey in Dar es Salaam. I hope it will be my first, and I hope you found this information useful. Maybe you will want to be making a trip here sometime in the near future to scout it out, possibly scout out investment opportunities. And if you did, please leave the video a like and share it with friends and family. And for now, asante sana. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye from Dar es Salaam.